Hello everyone, Pineapple here with the last of Missy's Dark Gallifrey run, aptly titled Dark Gallifrey Missy Part 3. The series started off a little boring, but using its setup and the fantastic character work of Part 2, Part 3 finishes the story by tying all the loose threads together. Doing some more great character exploration, but not without making at least one big misstep that, while sure isn't going to turn everyone off, is a bit frustrating. As usual, let's start off with the characters, although we have a few new, or I guess old faces than we thought. Of course, we start with Michelle Gomez as Missy, both of them. But first of all, we'll talk about the second Missy. This part confirming my thinking in part 2, as only one Missy needs to leave the temporally severed Opus Thule, this Missy being a lot nastier than our Missy from the last two parts, and going to pop back up in extremis. She's acted well and used well in the story, of course, but I found when following, let's call the time-severed version the Queen. When following the Queen, I was far more enamored in her character arc of redemption. Having to deal with the thought of the possibility of having erased the Doctor from reality, had they been wrong about the time-severing. So whenever we jumped to a Missy that was more of a pre-Series 9 Missy, I got a little frustrated, kind of hoping we'd already be over this bit. Not negatively, but just dismissively in the end. Next we have Paxi Vernon playing Elisa, and with Michelle Gomez as Dark Missy, who renames herself the Queen. First up is Princess Alisa, and after getting me interested at the end of part 2, yeah, she's just kind of the same. Not played poorly or killing her own people like in part 1, but I still had just about the same amount of investment in her here as the last episode, and that's not very much. Playing the Queen, on the other hand, while it's surprising no one around her notices the personality shift, Paxi does really well to imitate some of Missy's accents and eccentricities. And I thought the way the narrative kept this Missy alive was a really novel idea that we'll talk about in the story. So the Queen is acted well and on the whole far more interesting than canon Missy. Bruce Alexander returns as the new timeline version of Scratch. And he's almost the hero of the story. Now, while I think some things were dismissed too quickly, like even if he isn't as close to Sly Boots as the first Scratch was, he has very little reaction to the young man getting killed in this part. But other than that, his story is great, getting really emotional by the end. The acting is still really endearing, and while I just said he fails a smidge in the character department, he has a few moments with Sly Boots that really work, redeeming the character writing for him, as in most of episode 2, he just kept going, "Oh Don, that's not how that works." In another case of doubles, we have both Mortimer and Sly Boots. The 5-year time jump meaning Mortimer, the new timeline version, is the same age Sly Boots was in part 1 and 2, leading to a pretty cool dynamic, even if mostly in passing. First of all, we have Mortimer, and I love that he has a goatee, but unlike Sly Boots, who is friends with Missy/the Queen, Mortimer is pulled towards canon Missy. And while I like the jokes and interactions with Mortimer, he's kinda flat. Especially compared to Sly Boots. In fact, most of his moments involve pointing out that there's an issue because he is a version of Sly Boots. So not exactly a three-dimensional character, but fine while he's around. More importantly is Sly Boots, and although a little saddened by his demise, his story is actually ended really well. This story piles trauma on him, not even just this part, but his best friend is killed in front of him, he learns Missy killed the princess and took her over, his belief in the audience makes him go a little kooky, even if he is completely right, there is in fact an audience, and not even us listeners, but he goes a little crazy anyway. He tries to kill the Missies, and canon Missy puts him down, so not only is that all very well done, but he also has great emotional moments due to his trauma of being the only one now, once he thinks that his Missy is dead, to know the original timeline, his cracking reality well built up to, and while these characters all felt tropey and gimmicky or boring in part 1, I have to commend these 3 parts for doing so well to lay a foundation and building upon it. Best with Missy, Scratch and Sly Boots. Lastly is an addition I've criticised a lot, John Edgley Bond as Clank, and I think the malevolence is it speaks through automatons. Now, the malevolence is more of a force than a character, so I'll skip over it here, but Clank is actually given really good characterisation and a few good moments in the first part of the story, ending his screen time by sacrificing himself. So, sure, he still didn't have a lot to do, or a prominent role, but the way it was written and performed was more endearing than before.
And I find find it offensive that you should now use it to imply there is any connection between myself and those monsters.
I know. That's why I do it. You really need to grow a thicker skin, Clank, and maybe a sense of humour.
With me, Lieutenant Fox.
Don't call me that. That's not me. It's Sly Boots.
I know. That's why I do it.
The story starts with a really effective cold open, the Missy we've been following having been fighting for Opus Thule in the war against the Malevolence and dying, but unlike Seven holding on with sheer will, becoming the second coming of the Crispy Master, that I affectionately call Crispy Missy. This is a great idea and the perfect consequenceless place to implement it, I love it. Further into the war, we pick up on the day of Missy's arrival in the original timeline, the Resistance having set up base in the theatre thanks to Slyboot's romanticism. And after some casual robot racism from him, they lure a corrupted automaton into a trap in order to take its crystal. They take the crystal to Missy, while the princess spends the whole travel time updating Scratch on how much Missy's decaying form disgusts her, and as if the Missy redemption parallels weren't clear enough, she's got a piano in her little cellar room. Her rotting, decaying body slapped into one of the droids, it's a really well done effect. Slyboots and Clank wait by the docks as another Missy appears, just as she did in the first time around. As history may have changed, but since this is the point she entered the time-severed world, she always entered at that point. Ergo, two Missies. She's very quick to try and escape, but is like the others, trapped here. So goes with the flow until she meets herself, disgusted with the new decaying and more moral version of herself. She learns the whole time-severed concept, learns of Seven's death, and then as Moral Missy tries to body jump to her, she kills her and takes Clank's crystal, having enough to make the crown, much to Slyboot's despair. Slyboots freaks out and runs into the rain like a dramatic movie, with Scratch's comforting words mirroring what he said at the same time in part 1, which is quite clever, as the young man yells his damning of the audience into the sky. Like I said before, some really good character work even if part 1 was mid, but what it laid was built upon really well. Missy makes the crown while the princess kicks her other self's corpse, and in revenge and just general evilness, she uses the crown to bring the nicer Missy's consciousness back to life. Before she dies, they explore upon the concept of the whole living body of souls the Malevolence and the spirits powering the life crystals come from. That was set up in part 2. The group of souls, or the audience, are the collection of everyone who ever died on Opus Thule, as they don't have anywhere to go, recontextualizing the thing they've been saying for multiple parts.
Now we have a basic crown, capable of channeling vast amounts of psychic energy, which of course we have in abundance here, don't we?
Because nobody ever leaves Opus Thule.
Not even the dead.
Missy, having taken over the princess, attends her coronation, no one noticing anything's wrong, well, no one caring enough to suss it out. And after a great Eric Roberts reference, as he'll have the next Dark Gallifrey line, she renames herself the Queen. This episode actually has a lot of references, such as when Missy dances over Seven's corpse, singing the theme tune.
We can literally dance on his bones.
And they all work pretty well. They can be a little gratuitous once or twice, but they're all really fun and don't take you out of the story. Missy enlists the subservience of Mortimer, while the Queen warns her that killing the Doctor isn't as fulfilling as she thinks.
And as games of, snog, marry, kill go, it's not the result I expected. I always thought snog 5, marry 7, kill 9, and 4, obviously. Probably 6 as well. And as for 10, well, woof. How long have you got?
Going after the Malevolence, they decide to ram their ship right into his base, while the Queen explains that Opus Thule, the name itself, hinted at the existence of the audience as well. While it started boring, I once again have to commend this story for its forethought and intricate layers, feeling like you learn a lot more every episode without feeling completely lost. The fighting breaks out, and the Queen sends Slyboots after Missy, and although strong-armed into it, Missy uses the crown to win the day. But Slyboots still isn't too happy, holding Missy at gunpoint and eventually freaking out and claiming he's the audience's hero, the slayer of monsters. But that doesn't end so well as Missy just straight up kills him. The Queen is distraught, and Scratch could care less, but they all escape the day one. Finally, the Queen warns Missy that she'll be happier when forgiven, a nice setup, and she takes Scratch below the royal palace, showing him why his other self was bombarded so quickly in part 1, as the royals kept a tear under the castle, able to take someone literally anywhere and anywhen in the known multiverse. shoving the other Missy through with no knowledge of it because we know what she'd do if she knew something like that existed. And sending Scratch through back to his daughter, who does kinda sound like an adult putting on a child's voice. And the episode ends with the Queen telling the audience to piss off. Well, kind of. We get a mid-credits scene where Missy watches 12 in the confession dial, and offhandedly admitting she does have the capacity to feel something more. So the story was actually rather good, but what the hell does this have to do with Dark Gallifrey? Now, I'm sure this will come back, mentioned or utilised in a later Dark Gallifrey story, but not even the words Dark Gallifrey are muttered here. It leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth. This could have just been a Missy 3-part story instead of Dark Gallifrey. So in conclusion, while off to a rocky start, not unlike the War Master, we get more great acting, a great bookend to this story, and although with a few faults, I felt the Malevolence was a really dry and one-dimensional villain, and the lack of Dark Gallifrey in Dark Gallifrey. This story was clever and had a real sense of continuation, so while it hasn't got the star or gimmick power of part 2, this is still a really strong story, just needed some of its parts rebalanced, so I'll give Dark Gallifrey Missy Part 3 an 8.5 out of 10. But I could be convinced to go to a 9. But I just feel Part 2 and 3 are too different to rate the same. That leaves the Missy set off with an impressive score of 7.8, making it almost as solid as Morbius and above the War Master, fitting in nicely. Thank you everybody for watching my review of Dark Gallifrey Missy Part 3. I've already listened to Dark Gallifrey Master Part 1 and man, Dark Gallifrey just isn't good at opening parts, is it? Morbius's one was solid, but I don't think that'll be the next audio review to come. I think I'll do the first 13th Doctor story first. But anyway, please like the video if you liked it, comment down below if you wish, consider subscribing to the channel, and if you do, ring the notification bell so that you're told every single time that I make an upload. Once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next review. Bye!
Toast. A little piece of toast. Because there's so much to choose from. There's brown bread, white bread, all sorts of wholemeal bread. It comes in funny packages with writing on the side.